Imagine this. You're living in the year 2072, and someone asks you, when did the world actually flip? Not a minor upgrade, not a new app, but the moment everything quietly changed direction. Most people point at a pandemic, a war, or a financial crisis. But if you zoom out and really look at the data, the charts, and the stories, you see something else. A strange mix of gamers, graphics cards, and a company almost nobody treated as a future superpower. That company was NVIDIA, and what began as people saying, "Nice, my game runs smoother," became the engine room of the age of AI empires. In the early years of the decade that began around the year 2020, if you stopped someone on the street and said NVIDIA, you almost always got the same answer: graphics cards for gamers. GeForce was the name everyone knew. RTX meant you were flexing. People waited for new releases the way they used to wait for a new iPhone drop. Tech channels compared frame rates, temperatures, fan noise, and whether you were getting enough performance for your money. NVIDIA was loud online, but still just gaming. What almost nobody saw was what was happening underneath. While gamers argued about ray tracing and ultra-resolution, researchers in quiet labs were wrestling with neural networks. Those models were hungry. They did not need a little bit of compute. They wanted everything. And the exact same chips people bought to crank games to ultra were secretly perfect for training those models. A normal CPU is like one very smart worker, doing tasks one by one. A GPU is like a stadium full of average workers doing thousands of tiny tasks at the same time. For graphics, that is useful. For deep learning, that is a superpower. Quietly, research paper after research paper started ending with the same line. This model was trained on NVIDIA GPUs. No huge ad campaign, no dramatic slogan, just that one sentence, repeated again and again. From there, the story slowly started to bend. Games stayed important, but AI began to level up fast. First, it was image recognition, then speech, then translation, then full language models that could write, code, explain, and brainstorm. While the internet stared at viral demos, NVIDIA was building something that, in hindsight, may have mattered even more than the chips: the software layer called CUDA. CUDA was NVIDIA's secret glue. It allowed developers to talk to the GPU in a way that was extremely efficient. At first, people thought it saved time. Later, it started to feel like if you did not use it, you were behind. Once you had built a serious AI system on top of CUDA, switching away from NVIDIA was no longer a simple hardware decision. It meant pulling out a big part of your foundation and rebuilding it under pressure. Between the early and middle years of that decade, AI use cases exploded. At first, it looked like fun toys, better photo filters, smarter recommendations, smoother translation. Then it got serious. Banks used AI to flag fraud before humans saw it. Hospitals used AI to analyze scans and spot patterns that radiologists could miss. Factories used AI to squeeze more throughput out of every machine on the floor. Everywhere it was the same recipe, data, a model, and a lot of compute. And if you followed that stack all the way down, you did not find a magic cloud. You found data centers, long rows of racks, servers, and a lot of NVIDIA GPUs humming in the dark. Around the year 2025, a small group of people started to say something that sounded exaggerated at the time. They said this is not just a software boom. This is the birth of AI empires. They noticed that a tiny club of companies was not only building apps, but quietly owning the pipes, the platforms, the hardware, and the talent. NVIDIA was in that club, but in a unique position. While other firms sold visible products to end users, NVIDIA delivered the raw compute power under everything. It was not the shiny interface. It was the engine room of intelligence. From the outside, daily life still looked normal. Your phone still looked like a phone. Your laptop still looked like a laptop. But from above, Satellite photos told another story. Out in empty industrial zones, giant gray rectangles appeared. New data centers. Inside, row after row of servers and GPU racks, all wired into the global network. Cloud providers announced new regions and bigger clusters almost every quarter. Again and again, new NVIDIA chip generations arrived, with more performance per watt, more memory bandwidth, and deeper integration with AI frameworks. To most people, those announcements were just tech news. Another keynote, another spec sheet. But for people who lived in the world of infrastructure, this was concrete being poured. Every new data center, every new GPU generation, every CUDA update was another layer in the foundation of a different economy. In the late years of that decade, roughly between 2028 and 2030, the average person finally started to feel the shift. Not because they suddenly learned what a graphics processing unit is, but because AI began to show up in small pieces of everyday life. Students used language models to summarize long texts. Developers let AI write entire blocks of code. Creators used AI to brainstorm concepts and polish scripts. Companies rolled out chatbots and co-pilots for customer service, finance, logistics, and internal tools. AI moved from being a cool demo to something people expected to use. And, as always, the more fundamental the technology became, the less people thought about the infrastructure behind it. Nobody walked around thanking the electricity grid. They just assumed it was there. Around the year 2030, compute started to feel the same. You did not think about graphics processing units. You just expected the AI tools to respond instantly. Meanwhile, the financial world put different labels on NVIDIA. Analysts stopped calling it the gaming company and began comparing it to oil majors from the previous century. It sounded dramatic, but it made sense. Without graphics processing units, no large model training. Without large models, no modern artificial intelligence wave. Without that wave, far less growth. An obscure chip in a remote data center suddenly had macroeconomic weight. Investors noticed. NVIDIA's valuation shot up. People who only stared at quarterly earnings were shocked. People who zoomed out saw something else. It was not only a single stock that was being repriced. Compute itself was being repriced as a scarce resource. At the same time, the first warning lights appeared. Energy companies started saying that these data centers were drawing frightening amounts of power. Local governments worried about water use for cooling. Privacy advocates pointed to the fact that a handful of players controlled both the most compute and the most sensitive data. But despite all that, the feeling that we are living through something unique dominated. The train did not slow down. NVIDIA pushed on with new chips, new software, new partnerships with all the major cloud providers. Now, from the vantage point of the year 2072, when we look back at the period from roughly the early years of the decade, starting at 2020 to the middle of the decade that followed, we can see it clearly. There was no single launch event where someone declared welcome to the age of AI empires. There was no exact start date written in history books. What there was a slow, relentless stacking of hardware innovation, software ecosystems, data center build-outs, and shifting expectations. For most people around the year 2030, it felt like a series of cool tools, viral demos, and rising stock prices. For us, looking back, it is the foundation layer of almost everything running in the year 2072. Under the apps, under the assistants, under the AI that now feels obvious, lies that one turning point. That is the moment a company that only made gaming cards quietly became the engine room of a completely new kind of empire.